The morning fog rolled through the coastal settlement of Haven's Rest like a living thing, muting the sounds of waves against the cliffs and turning the small fishing village into something ethereal and unreal. It was the kind of place people came to disappear, remote enough that the war's scars weren't visible, quiet enough that you could pretend the past 5 years hadn't happened. Callan Reed had been pretending for 3 of those years. He stood on the dock checking the day's catch manifest when the air changed. It was subtle, a shift in pressure, a change in the quality of light, the way every instinct honed by years of combat suddenly screamed that something was wrong. His hand moved automatically toward a sidearm he no longer carried. Then he saw her. She emerged from the fog like a figure from a dream he'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Princess Sarilith knows Vayara of the Astral Dominion, heir to the Celestial Throne, commander of 7-star fleets, and according to every official record in human and Dominion space, dead. Except she was very much alive. She looked different. Her skin still held that distinctive opalescent quality of Dominion nobility, shifting between pearl and pale blue depending on the light, but it was marked now with scars that formed patterns he recognized from his intelligence training. Interrogation burns, restraint marks, the systematic damage of long-term captivity. Her hair, those impossibly long silver strands that moved with her emotions like living things, was cut brutally short. She wore civilian clothes that hung loose on a frame that had been slender before and was gaunt now. But her eyes, those luminous violet eyes with no visible pupils, were exactly as he remembered, and they were fixed on him with an intensity that made every person on the dock instinctively step back. Callan's datapad clattered to the weathered wood. Sarilith crossed the distance between them in measured steps. Her movements had always been fluid, almost dance-like, but there was something harder about her now. Something forged in whatever hell she'd survived for the past 3 years. "Did you forsake me?" Her voice carried across the suddenly silent dock, accented but clear, shaking with barely controlled emotion. "Look at me, Callan Reed, and answer. Did you abandon the oath we swore? Did you release the bond we forged in blood and starlight?" Every eye on the dock turned to stare. Callan saw recognition dawning on several faces, refugees from the war who remembered the propaganda broadcasts, veterans who'd served during the conflict, a few who'd been part of the intelligence networks during the final campaigns. He stood frozen, trapped between the ghost of a woman he'd mourned and the very real political disaster her presence represented. Sira! Her name felt foreign on his tongue after 3 years of not saying it. "You're alive." Clearly. The word came out sharp, bitter. 3 years, Callan. 3 years I survived in captivity believing one absolute truth, that you were waiting. That the bond we forged couldn't be broken by distance or time or even death. That my anchor would hold steady no matter what storms came. Her hair, though short, still moved with her emotions, the strands lifting and coiling with agitation. I endured interrogation, torture, isolation, all while holding onto the certainty that somewhere in the galaxy you refused to accept their lies about my death, that you were searching, fighting, demanding answers. They told me you were dead. The words felt inadequate even as Callan spoke them. They showed me wreckage, your ship destroyed in the Terminus Nebula during the final offensive. No survivors. They held a memorial service broadcast across 40 systems. The war ended 3 weeks later, and the treaty specifically. The treaty. Saralith's laugh was harsh and devoid of humor. The treaty that declared our bond unauthorized fraternization between combatants. The treaty that made what we were into something illegal, something shameful, something to be erased from history like it never existed. She stepped closer, and Callan saw tears, bioluminescent, faintly glowing, tracking down her cheeks. I watched the treaty signing from a cell on a prison asteroid. Watched them shake hands over my supposedly martyred corpse. Watched them agree that any bonds formed between humans and Dominion citizens during the war were null and void by mutual decree. What was I supposed to do? Callan heard his own voice rising, felt 3 years of carefully controlled grief and anger cracking open. You were dead, Sira. Officially, conclusively, irreversibly dead. The Dominion's royal family confirmed it. Earth's military intelligence verified it. Both governments built their peace agreement on the foundation of your sacrifice. Anyone who questioned it was labeled a destabilization risk. So you stopped questioning, not an accusation. Worse, a statement of fact delivered with the weight of absolute betrayal behind it. I questioned for 8 months, the words exploded out of him. 8 months I refused to accept it. I called in every favor, contacted every intelligence asset, investigated every inconsistency in the official story. I became a problem, Sira, a threat to the peace process, and you know what happened? Tell me. They arrested me, court-martialed me for attempting to undermine interstellar treaty obligations through propagation of conspiracy theories. They showed me classified footage, recovery operations, genetic analysis, testimony from Dominion officials confirming your death. They had experts explain to me in excruciating detail why it was impossible you'd survived. And then they offered me a choice. Accept discharge with honor and relocate to a colony world for psychological rehabilitation, or face military prison for the rest of my natural life. Saralith was very still. Around them, the dock had cleared, people instinctively moving away from whatever storm was building between the human and the alien princess who shouldn't exist. So you chose exile over faith, she said quietly. You chose their comfortable lie over the bond we swore would transcend death itself. I chose to survive. Callan's hands clenched into fists. I chose not to throw my life away on what every authority figure in human space told me was impossible grief. I chose to honor your memory, what I thought was your memory, by trying to live the peaceful life the treaty was supposed to make possible. And yes, part of me died with you. Part of me has been dead for 3 years. But I'm still here, Sira. I survived. Same as you. Not the same. Her voice dropped to something dangerous. I survived believing you were my constant, my anchor, the one certainty in a universe of lies. You survived by accepting their lies and moving on. The words hung between them like a physical barrier. Callan looked at her, this impossible ghost of the woman he'd loved, now standing on a fishing dock in a backwater colony demanding he explain why he dared to accept reality and continue living. There's a cafe, he said abruptly. 2 streets back, private booths. We shouldn't have this conversation in public. Why? Saralith's eyes flashed. Worried about your reputation, about people knowing what you were to the enemy during the war. Worried about the kill teams that are probably already mobilizing because someone just uploaded footage of a dead princess confronting her supposedly reformed intelligence handler to every social network in the sector. He gestured at the scattered dock workers, most of whom were indeed recording on personal devices. If you're back, if you're alive, that's a political earthquake, and earthquakes get people killed. Something shifted in Saralith's expression, fury giving way to calculation. You're right, we need to move. They walked through Haven's Rest in tense silence, Saralith's presence drawing stares, but her deliberately neutral body language discouraging approach. The cafe, really more of a bar that served bad coffee, was nearly empty in the late morning. Callan led her to a booth in the back, positioned so he could watch the entrance. Old habits. They sat across from each other in the cracked, synthetic leather seats, and for a moment neither spoke. This close, Callan could see the full extent of the changes. The scars weren't just physical, there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there during the war. A hardness, a distance. The look of someone who'd been broken and had put themselves back together into something sharper. "Tell me what happened," he said. "From the beginning." Saralith's hands, four-fingered and more delicate than human, wrapped around the coffee mug the cafe owner had automatically brought. "My ship didn't malfunction during the Terminus offensive. It was sabotaged. Someone in the Dominion's military command wanted me dead, and they timed it perfectly during a major battle where my loss could be attributed to enemy action." "Who?" "Admiral and of the Fourth Fleet. He'd been opposed to peace negotiations from the beginning, saw my diplomatic overtures to human command as weakness, as treason even." Her coffee sat untouched. "He arranged an accident with my ship's navigation systems during the battle. The vessel broke apart. Most of my crew died instantly. I survived in an escape pod that was supposed to self-destruct, but didn't because my chief engineer had installed unauthorized backup systems." "Smart engineer. She died saving my life." Saralith's voice was flat. "The pod drifted for 2 weeks before it was picked up by collective scavengers. They realized who I was and saw an opportunity. For the next 3 years, I was sold between various factions who wanted information about Dominion military capabilities, diplomatic protocols, royal succession procedures. Each time I thought I might escape, they moved me to a new facility." Callan felt something cold settle in his chest. "The collective, they're the ones who tortured me for intelligence. Yes, who kept me alive specifically because I was worth more as a source of information than as a corpse. Also, yes. Who probably intended to eventually ransom me back to the Dominion once the war ended, most likely." Her hands tightened on the mug. "Except they couldn't, because officially I was already dead. Kethrin made sure of that. He provided genetic samples, probably from my dead crew, to confirm my death, held a state funeral, used my martyrdom to push for harder terms in the peace negotiations. And when the war ended with me officially deceased, I became a political problem no one wanted to solve." "How did you escape?" "I didn't. I was released." She finally looked up at him. 6 months ago, someone paid the collective to let me go, arranged transport back to Dominion space, left me with enough currency to survive and a data chip containing evidence about who sabotaged my ship and why. No message, no explanation, just freedom. Who would do that? I don't know. But I have theories." She pulled out a small data chip. "This contains intercepted communications between Kethrin and someone in Earth's military intelligence. Someone who wanted me dead just as badly as he did. Someone who saw our bond as a threat to post-war stability and worked with Kethrin to eliminate me and discredit you." Callan stared at the chip. You're saying my own command structure conspired to kill you. I'm saying someone in Earth's command saw what we represented, the possibility that the war was unnecessary. That peace could have been achieved years earlier through diplomatic channels instead of bloodshed, and decided we were too dangerous to let survive intact. Catherine killed me. Whoever this is made sure you'd never believe I might be alive. The implications settled over them both like a shroud. If that's true, Callan said slowly, and if you're back alive with evidence, then the peace treaty is built on murder and conspiracy. Yes, Sarilith leaned forward. That's why I'm here, Callan, not just to confront you about accepting my death, though I needed to understand that too. I'm here because I need your help exposing the conspiracy. You have contacts in Earth's intelligence networks, access to classified archives, the ability to investigate from inside human space while I work the Dominion angle. If we do this, we won't just expose a conspiracy. We'll destabilize the entire peace agreement. Both governments will brand us terrorists. We'll be hunted. I know. We'll be alone against everyone who benefited from keeping us apart. Military command on both sides, the politicians who built their careers on the war, the corporations that profited from it, all of them will want us dead. I know that too. Then why? Callan searched her face. Why not disappear? Take the freedom someone gave you and start over somewhere neither government can find you. Live whatever life you want without becoming a target. Sarilith's hair lifted and spread like a fan. A Dominion emotional display he recognized as absolute conviction. Because they don't get to win, Callan. They don't get to kill me, torture me, erase what we were, and then continue living comfortable lives built on those crimes. Because someone needs to stand up and say that the peace was built on lies and murder, and the people responsible need to answer for it. She reached across the table, her hand hovering over his. And because despite my anger, despite the pain of thinking you'd abandoned me, I still believe you're the only person in this galaxy I can trust to help me burn their comfortable lies to ash. Callan looked at her hand, 4 fingers instead of 5, skin that shifted colors with her emotions, fundamentally alien and yet more familiar than anything else in his carefully constructed new life. 3 years he'd spent building walls, learning to function in a world where she didn't exist, accepting that the war was over and some wounds didn't heal, they just scarred over and you learned to live with the pain. And now here she was, alive, asking him to tear down everything he'd built and wage a new kind of war, not with ships and soldiers, but with truth and evidence against enemies who'd already proven they'd kill to keep their secrets buried. He should say no, should tell her to find someone else, someone who hadn't spent 3 years learning to live without her. Should protect the fragile peace he'd made with a universe that had taken her away. Instead, he placed his hand over hers. 4 fingers and 5, human warmth and dominion cool, the touch they'd shared in secret during the war when touching across species was considered fraternization. I kept files, he said quietly. Everything I found during my investigation before they arrested me. Communications intercepts. Financial records tracking military expenditures that didn't match official budgets. Names of people who questioned the official story and then disappeared. All of it encrypted and buried in systems they don't know I can still access. You never stopped investigating. I stopped visibly. But you can't just turn off the part of your brain that knows something's fundamentally wrong. Even when everyone tells you to accept it, even when accepting it is the only way to survive, some part of you keeps searching for the truth. He squeezed her hand. I just never expected the truth to walk onto my dock and demand answers. Saralith's expression softened. I was cruel. When I saw you here living quietly, I thought you'd forgot me completely. Moved on. Built a new life where I was just an unfortunate wartime casualty. I didn't understand the pressure you were under. Didn't realize they'd forced you into the same impossible choice they forced on me. Survive by accepting their version of reality or die fighting a truth no one would believe. We were both victims of the same conspiracy. Yes. But now we're both alive, both armed with evidence, both angry enough to fight back. Her hand turned to properly grip his, the formal hand clasp of Dominion oaths modified for human anatomy. So I'm asking, Callan Reed, not as your princess, not as some ghost from your past, but as your partner, your equal, your anchor. Will you help me expose the conspiracy that tried to destroy us? Will you stand with me against everyone who will try to keep us silent? Will you choose truth over safety one more time? Callan looked past her at the cafe, dingy, half-empty, existing in a corner of the galaxy where the war was supposed to be over and people were supposed to have moved on. He thought about the life he'd built here. Simple, safe, carefully constructed to avoid attention and the memories that came with it. Then he looked back at Saralith, scarred, furious, alive against all impossible odds, and realized that life had always been a lie. A comfortable fiction he'd told himself to survive. But survival wasn't the same as living. I have conditions, he said, her eyebrow ridges rose. You're negotiating. We're partners, right? That means equal say in how we do this. He held her gaze. First condition, we don't just expose the conspiracy. We make sure we survive it. That means careful planning, multiple contingencies, safe houses, exit strategies, and building a coalition of allies before we go public. Agreed. Second condition, we do this together. No solo missions, no sacrificing yourself to protect me, no recreating the same dynamic where you make command decisions and I follow orders. We're equal partners or this doesn't work. Saralith smiled, the first genuine expression he'd seen since she'd appeared from the fog. I can accept that, though you should know I'm not very good at the equal partners thing. Royalty comes with certain habits. You'll learn, third condition. He paused. When this is over, if we survive, we figure out what we are to each other, not what the war made us, not what political necessity demands, but what we actually want. No oaths sworn in desperation, no bonds forged because we were the only ones who understood each other in the middle of chaos, just us, real and honest. Her hair lifted and spread, turning a luminous silver, joy in Dominion emotional language. That's the condition I was most hoping you'd make. Outside, the fog was beginning to lift. Through the cafe's grimy windows, Callan could see Haven's Rest emerging into clearer light. In a few hours, maybe less, the footage of their confrontation would reach people who'd want them dead. The conspiracy they were planning to expose would mobilize against them. The comfortable peace both governments had built on lies would begin to crack. But right now, in this moment, a human intelligence officer and an alien princess who'd both been declared dead were alive together and planning to wage war on everyone who'd tried to erase them. So, Saralith said, still holding his hand, where do we start? Callan pulled out his comm unit, already accessing encrypted files he'd buried 3 years ago. We start by making sure you survive the next 24 hours. Then we contact my sources, the ones who'll believe your story. Then we begin building a case so airtight that even people who want us silenced won't be able to dismiss it. And then we burn their lies down and rebuild the truth from the ashes. He met her eyes. Together, the way we should have done 3 years ago if they hadn't torn us apart. Saralith's smile was fierce and royal and absolutely uncompromising. Together, she agreed. My anchor, my partner, my truth. Behind them, the cafe door chimed as new customers entered. Callan's combat instincts, still sharp after 3 years of civilian life, immediately categorized them as threats, too alert, too purposeful, scanning the room with professional efficiency. He and Saralith stood simultaneously. "Time to run?" she asked. "Time to run," he confirmed. They left through the back exit, hand in hand, as the kill team moved to intercept. The war they'd thought was over was beginning again. But this time they were fighting it together. And this time, the enemy wouldn't see them coming until it was far too late.